Welcome to the Iran 1400 Project podcast, where we explore the past, present, and possible futures of Iran through informed dialogue, independent thought, and diverse voices. From historical insight to emerging narratives, we connect ideas to action in the pursuit of a more just, inclusive, and forward-looking society. Join us as we rethink Iran's trajectory, one conversation at a time.
Ever feel like you need to go, deeper than the headlines to really diss what's happening, especially in places going through massive shifts?
Yeah, absolutely. Surface level just doesn't cut it sometimes.
So today we're trying to do exactly that. We're diving into the ideas of Aram Hessami, specifically from his book that translates to 2-3 words.
And it's quite a work, really a sharp critique looking at governance, democracy, justice, the big stuff, particularly with an eye on Iran's evolution.
Right. And our way in today is through a review of Hessami's book. It's by Vafa Mostakim, published by Iran 1400 Inc., back on March 1st, 2025.
So think of this as our mission, distilling Hessami's core ideas, using Mostakim's review as our guide, a shortcut to the main points, essentially.
Exactly. Okay, so jumping right in, Hessami seems to have some, let's say, strong views on power and government.
Oh, definitely. The review makes it clear. The book is fundamentally an unflinching critique. Both theocratic and autocratic systems are under his microscope.
He doesn't just list problems, though.
No, he digs into why they fall short. Right. And one key idea is that democracy isn't like a destination you arrive at.
More of a continuous process.
Precisely. He sees it as this constant struggle, a pushback against anyone trying to monopolize power. It's dynamic.
So it's not just setting up elections. It's like you constantly have to work at it. And it sounds like he goes really fundamental, asking why we even have states and what our role is.
He really does. It's quite philosophical. He pushes you to think about the state's purpose and what active citizenship actually means. What's our responsibility?
And how does that connect to, the practical side? Authoritarian regime.
Well, his argument is that these regimes often create a sort of facade of democracy. They might have the structures, the institutions.
But they're empty.
Kind of, yeah. Hollowed out. They don't genuinely represent the people's will, which obviously makes true democratic function impossible.
Which leads to his point about needing real civic institutions, I guess, things outside direct government control.
Exactly. Like independent media, community groups, places where people can actually organize and voice their views freely. He argues these are vital.
Without them, the will of the people is just noise, or maybe just what the regime wants it to be.
Right. These authentic spaces are needed to counter the state-controlled narrative. It raises the question, though, how do you build and protect those spaces? It's not easy.
Okay, so shifting to democracy itself, Hessami isn't painting it as some kind of perfect, inevitable outcome, is he? Sounds like he sees pitfalls.
No, definitely not. His view is much more nuanced. Democracy isn't guaranteed, and its path isn't, always forward. It can backtrack.
What kind of dangers does he point out?
Well, one major concern is majoritarianism. When the majority uses its power to suppress the rights of minorities, that's a classic tension.
Right, the tyranny of the majority idea.
Exactly. And then there's the other big balancing act, tradition versus progress. How does a society honor its past while also adapting and moving forward?
That's a universal challenge, isn't it, finding that balance?
It really is. And for Hessami, underpinning all of this is the struggle for justice. That seems to be the core theme.
And how does he define justice?
It's grounded in equality, fairness, and importantly, accountability within the system. Institutions need to be held accountable.
He also takes aim at systems that justify inequality, right? Using things like religion or nationalism.
Yes, he's very critical of that. Any ideology used to rationalize unfairness. His argument is basically that fundamental human rights have to come first, always, above any specific doctrine.
So like a universal standard for human rights, not culturally relative.
That's a really key part of his thinking. He pushes back against the idea that rights change depending on where you are. He advocates for a universal baseline.
Which I imagine leads him straight into the cultural dynamics within Iran. Modernity versus tradition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He spends time examining that very clash.
Yeah.
How modern ideas are interacting with long-standing traditions.
How does he see that playing out, especially with younger people?
He sees younger generations actively reshaping concepts. Things like individual freedom, what citizenship means, even identity itself. They're questioning the old norms.
That sounds like a source of significant social energy, potential for change.
Definitely. And it leads Hessami to ask some really tough questions. Like, can democracy truly flourish if it's constrained by very rigid traditions? Is there an inherent conflict there?
And where does religion fit in? And secularism?
Right. He explores those complex relationships, how religion, secular ideas, and the structure of government interact, especially when a society is in transition. It's messy stuff.
It's clear Hessami believes change comes from the ground up, though, not just from leaders.
Oh, absolutely. A core message, delivered with urgency, according to the review, is the power of people acting together. Civic engagement, collective action, it's the engine of political transformation for him.
The future rests with the citizens, basically.
That's the idea, their willingness to participate, to demand change.
And he looks at historical examples, social movements.
Yes, he analyzes past and present movements, trying to understand what makes them succeed or fail. Things like leadership, strategy, organization, the practical elements.
So it's not just theory. He's looking for actionable lessons.
Exactly, which leads to those critical questions the book apparently raises. What are the best strategies to dismantle authoritarian structures? How do ordinary people reclaim their agency when they feel powerless?
Big questions. And he looks globally, too, for lessons relevant to Iran.
Yeah, drawing insights from democratic movements worldwide, trying to see what might apply, what could work in the Iranian context, makes it feel very grounded.
So putting it all together is 2-3 words, basically Hessami's vision for Iran's future, a kind of manifesto.
That seems to be how the review frames it, yes. A manifesto for democratic renewal. It critiques, sure, but it also proposes a vision based on justice, equality, and importantly, participatory governance.
Citizens having a real say.
That's the core of it. Using historical patterns and current movements to sketch out that potential future.
And Mysticum's review, the piece we're drawing on, encourages readers to keep thinking about this stuff.
Right. The review itself acts as a prompt for more discussion about how the individual, society, and the state relate to each other, and how that relationship is always evolving.
Because concepts like justice and freedom aren't fixed.
Exactly. Mustakim highlights that they're shaped by culture, politics, economics. They need constant re-examination.
The review even throws out some big questions for us, the readers, doesn't it? Like, what does justice mean today in our super connected world?
Yeah, really fundamental stuff. How can we actually achieve equality when societies have deep-rooted hierarchies? And what is freedom when state power and individual desires clash?
Grappling with those helps continue the conversation Hessami started.
Precisely. It keeps the ideas alive and relevant.
It's useful to know a bit about Hessami himself. The review gives some background.
It does. He's a professor of political science and philosophy at Montgomery College. And his academic work, it's focused squarely on these themes. Democratic transitions, discourse theory.
Discourse theory, that's about how language shapes our reality, roughly.
Yeah, how language and ideas construct our understanding, especially in politics. Also, social change. He's got a PhD from George Washington University, specialized in Western political thought and postmodern philosophy. So, a solid academic grounding.
And he's written quite a bit on Iran before this book.
Seems so. The review lists other publications, things like Iran's New Century and the Formation of National Identity, the fickle history of the women's movement in Iran, modernity in Iran.
So 2-3 words fits into a larger body of his work exploring these issues.
Exactly. It gives context. Shows his long-term engagement with these complex questions about Iran's path.
And the reviewer, Vafa Mostakim,
also brings relevant expertise, a journalism and media analyst background, over 20 years in strategic communication, media studies, discourse analysis.
So he understands how ideas are framed and communicated. Makes sense he'd write an insightful review.
Right. His background probably gives him a good lens for analyzing Hessami's arguments and their impact.
Okay, so to sort of wrap up our deep dive here, we've looked at Aram Hessami's 2-3 words through Vafa Mostakim's review. We've touched on his critique of authoritarianism.
His exploration of democracy's challenges. the clash between modernity and tradition.
The huge emphasis on citizen engagement, and ultimately this vision he offers for a democratic Iran built on justice and participation.
Yeah, and the review really drives home how stimulating Hessami's work is. It pushes you to think, to question assumptions about governance, society, Iran's future.
Definitely thought-provoking. So, thinking beyond just Hessami's specific focus on Iran, it makes you ponder. What are the absolute essential ingredients for any society, anywhere, to be genuinely resilient and just?
That's the big takeaway question, isn't it? What are those universal building blocks? It prompts you to think much more broadly.
Thank you for listening to the Iran 1400 Project podcast. The Iran 1400 Project invites scholars, experts, and intellectuals to share their assessment of the evolution of institutions and ideas during the past 100 years to inspire a vision of Iran in the 1400s. If you found today's episode thought-provoking, be sure to subscribe, share, and continue the conversation. For more content and upcoming events, visit Iran1400.org. Until next time, stay engaged, stay informed, and stay hopeful.